March 9, 1974. Deep in the jungles of Lubang Island, Philippines. A 52-year-old Japanese soldier stands at attention in a tattered Imperial Army uniform he has been wearing for 3 decades. His rifle, still functional, is slung over his shoulder. His boots are falling apart, his face is weathered, aged beyond his years. And he's waiting for one thing: orders from his commanding officer. The war ended 29 years ago. August 15, 1945. Japan surrendered. Everyone went home, but not Hiroo Onoda. He never got the memo. Or rather, he got it, he just didn't believe it. Leaflets were dropped from planes. His family sent letters begging him to come home. Search parties tried to find him for decades. But Onoda stayed hidden in the jungle, convinced it was all a lie, propaganda, convinced the war was still on, convinced Japan would come back for him. And then, in 1974, a 24-year-old hippie college dropout named Norio Suzuki shows up in the jungle and says, "Hey man, the Emperor's worried about you. The war's been over for 30 years, and somehow against all odds Onoda believes him. But there's a catch. He won't surrender until his commanding officer personally relieves him of duty." So they track down Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, now a 60-year-old bookseller in Japan, fly him to the Philippines, and he walks into the jungle to tell Onoda, "Your mission is over. You can go home now." And just like that, after 10,000 nights in the jungle, after watching 3 comrades die, after killing 30 Filipino civilians thinking they were enemies, Hiroo Onoda finally stops fighting World War II. This is the story of the man who refused to believe the war was over. And it's way more intense than you think. Drop a comment with your favorite historical topic and smash that subscribe button for more insane stories like this. December 26, 1944. A 22-year-old Japanese intelligence officer named Hiroo Onoda arrives on Lubang Island in the Philippines. It's a small, unimportant island 150 kilometers southwest of Manila. The war isn't going well for Japan. The Allies are closing in, and Onoda's orders are clear: destroy the airstrip and pier to prevent American landings, carry out guerrilla warfare, and most importantly, never surrender. His commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, gives him one final instruction that will haunt him for the next 3 decades. You are absolutely forbidden to die by your own hand. It may take 3 years, it may take 5, but whatever happens, we'll come back for you. Until then, so long as you have one soldier, you are to continue to lead him. Onoda takes those words literally. They become the foundation of everything he does for the next 29 years. Within months, the Americans invade Lubang. The battle is swift and brutal. Most Japanese soldiers are killed or captured. But Onoda, along with 3 other soldiers, Private Yuichi Akatsu, Corporal Shichi Shimada, and Private First Class Kinshichi Kozuka, retreats into the mountains. They set up camp in the dense jungle, hidden from view, and wait for the Japanese army to return. And then, in August 1945, something happens that should have changed everything. Japan surrenders. World War II is over. The Emperor himself announces it on the radio. Leaflets are dropped from planes over Lubang Island, written in Japanese, telling soldiers to come down from the mountains. The message is clear. The war ended on August 15th. Come down from the mountain. Onoda and his men find the leaflet in October 1945. They read it carefully. They examine the paper quality. They analyze the wording. And they come to a conclusion: it's fake. It has to be a lie, propaganda. If the war were really over, why would Filipino civilians still be shooting at them? Why would the police be hunting them? It doesn't make sense. So they ignore it and keep fighting. This is where the story gets tragic. Onoda and his group aren't just hiding, they're actively carrying out guerrilla warfare. They raid farms, steal rice, kill cattle, burn crops. To them, they're denying resources to the enemy. To the Filipino villagers, they're terrorists. Over the years, Onoda's group would be responsible for killing up to 30 civilians, farmers, fishermen, people who had nothing to do with the war. But in Onoda's mind, they were all enemy combatants. The men live like ghosts. They build hidden camps in the jungle, covered by thick vegetation. They patch their uniforms with scraps of fabric. They clean their rifles obsessively, making sure they're always ready to fight. They survive on bananas, coconuts, stolen rice, and whatever animals they can hunt. Wild boar, rats, occasionally, a cow. They boil everything bananas with the skin on, meat dried over fires. It tastes awful, but it keeps them alive. Months turn into years. The Japanese government keeps trying to reach them. In 1952, 7 years after the war ended, they drop family photographs and letters over Lubang. Onoda finds a photo of his childhood home, but something's wrong. The house looks different. It's been rebuilt. The buildings don't match his memory. To Onoda, this is proof the photo is fake. The Allies are trying to trick him. He becomes even more cautious. Search parties are sent to the island. Japanese officials, former soldiers. Even Onoda's own brother participates in one search mission, using a loudspeaker to beg him to come home. But Onoda hears the voice and thinks, they've captured my brother and they're forcing him to say this. He stays hidden. And then the group starts to fracture. In September 1949, Private Akatsu separates from the others. He wanders alone for 6 months before finally surrendering to Philippine forces in March 1950. When Onoda hears about it, he doesn't see it as proof that surrendering is safe. He sees it as betrayal. Akatsu was weak. He gave in. And now the enemy knows their tactics, their hiding spots, everything. Onoda becomes even more paranoid. In June 1953, Corporal Shimada is shot in the leg during a firefight with local fishermen. Onoda nurses him back to health, treating the wound with whatever medicinal plants he can find in the jungle. For a year, Shimada recovers. They continue their mission together. And then, on May 7, 1954, Shimada is killed. A search party Japanese officials trying to find Onoda spots movement in the jungle and opens fire. Shimada is hit. He dies instantly. Now there are only two, Onoda and Kozuka. They've been in the jungle for nearly a decade, and they're not giving up. For the next 18 years, Hiroo Onoda and Kinshichi Kozuka live together in the mountains of Lubang Island. They become inseparable. Onoda would later describe Kozuka as closer than a real brother. They develop a routine. They move between hidden camps every few weeks to avoid detection. They raid farms at night. They gather intelligence on what they believe are American and Filipino military installations in reality, just local villages and schools. Every sound in the jungle is interpreted as enemy movement. Every stranger is a spy. They've convinced themselves that the world outside the jungle is a lie. The newspapers they occasionally find, fake. The magazines, propaganda. In 1959, a search party leaves behind recent Japanese newspapers and magazines, hoping Onoda will read them and realize how much time has passed. Onoda picks one up, flips through it, and sees advertisements for cars, electronics, and modern appliances he doesn't recognize. The Japan described in these pages is unrecognizable. To him, that's not proof the world has changed, it's proof the entire thing is fake news. Allied forgeries designed to demoralize him. In 1959, the Japanese government officially declares Hiroo Onoda dead. His family holds a funeral. They mourn. They move on. But Onoda is still out there, still fighting, still waiting for Japan to come back for him. The years blur together. 1960, 1965, 1970. Onoda and Kozuka are now middle-aged men, but they're still living like soldiers in their 20s. They maintain military discipline. They stand watch in shifts. They conduct patrol routes through the jungle. They still believe they're gathering intelligence that will be useful when the Japanese army returns. And they still attack villagers they believe are enemy guerrillas. Stories spread through Lubang about the mythical Japanese soldiers in the jungle. Parents warn their children not to go too far into the forest. Farmers avoid certain areas. The local police organize periodic sweeps, but Onoda and Kozuka are too skilled. They evade every search party. They've spent decades learning every inch of the island. They know where to hide, where to run, how to disappear. And then, on October 19, 1972, everything changes. Onoda and Kozuka are burning rice they've stolen from farmers, part of their ongoing guerrilla campaign. To local police officers spot the smoke and investigate. There's a brief firefight. Kozuka is hit twice. He dies almost instantly. For the first time in 28 years, Hiroo Onoda is alone. He buries his friend in the jungle. No ceremony, no marker, just a shallow grave covered with leaves. And then he keeps going, because the mission isn't over. Major Taniguchi said they'd come back, and Onoda is going to wait as long as it takes. For the next 2 years, Onoda lives in complete solitude. He talks to himself to stay sane. He continues his patrols. He still raids farms. He still evades search parties. He's 50 years old, living in a tattered uniform, surviving on boiled bananas and stolen rice, convinced he's still fighting World War II, and nobody can reach him. The world outside has moved on. It's 1972. Man has walked on the moon. Japan is an economic powerhouse. The Beatles have come and gone. The Vietnam War is ending. Color television exists. But Onoda knows none of this. His world is the jungle, his rifle, and the orders he received in 1944. And then, in 1974, a 24-year-old Japanese hippie decides he's going to find him. Norio Suzuki is not a soldier. He's not a government official. He's not part of any official search party. He's a college dropout, a wanderer, a guy who decided to travel the world looking for adventure. And in 1972, after 4 years of exploring Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, he returns to Japan and feels bored. Everything feels fake to him. To modern, to artificial, he wants to do something real. In October 1972, the news breaks that Kenshichi Kozuka has been killed on Lubang Island, which means Hiroo Onoda is still out there, alone. The Japanese government has officially declared him dead, but Suzuki doesn't believe it. He decides he's going to find Onoda, not because he's being paid, not because anyone asked him to, but because it sounds impossible, and impossible things are the only things worth doing. Suzuki tells his friends his plan. He's going to find Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman in that order. Everyone thinks he's crazy, but in January 1974, Suzuki flies to the Philippines, makes his way to Lubang Island, and walks into the jungle. He has no military training, no survival skills, no backup, just a camera, some supplies, and an absurd amount of confidence. For 4 days, he wanders through the jungle, calling out Onoda's name, leaving notes, hoping he doesn't get shot. And then, on February 20th, 1974, he finds him. Onoda emerges from the trees, rifle raised, ready to fire. Suzuki freezes. He's read everything about Onoda, so he knows exactly what to say. He raises his hands and shouts, "Onoda-san, the Emperor and the people of Japan are worried about you." Onoda lowers his rifle. He stares at this strange young man with long hair, casual clothes, and a friendly smile. And for the first time in decades, Onoda has a conversation with someone who isn't trying to kill him or capture him. Suzuki explains that the war ended in 1945, that Japan surrendered, that the world has moved on, that everyone thinks Onoda is dead. Onoda listens, and then he says, "I don't believe you." But here's the thing, Onoda is intrigued. Suzuki isn't aggressive, he's not threatening. He's just talking, like a normal person. Onoda later described it in an interview. This hippie boy, Suzuki, came to the island to listen to the feelings of a Japanese soldier. They spend hours together. Suzuki takes photographs. Onoda tells him stories. And eventually, Onoda makes a deal. "I will surrender." Onoda says, but only if my commanding officer personally orders me to stand down. Suzuki agrees. He takes the photographs and flies back to Japan. When he shows the pictures to the Japanese government, they can't believe it. Onoda is still alive. And now they have to find Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, the man who gave Onoda his final orders 30 years ago. They track Taniguchi down. He's 60 years old now, retired from the military, working in a bookstore. When officials approach him and explain the situation, he's shocked. He thought Onoda was dead. Everyone thought Onoda was dead, but he agrees to go, because those were his orders, and he's the only one who can end this. On March 9, 1974, Major Taniguchi flies to the Philippines, accompanied by Suzuki and a small delegation. They walk into the jungle, and Onoda, wearing his 30-year-old Imperial Army uniform, cap, and sword, stands at attention. Taniguchi looks at him. This young soldier he sent to Lubang in 1944 is now a weathered, middle-aged man, and Taniguchi reads the orders. In accordance with the Imperial Command, the 14th Area Army has ceased all combat activity. In accordance with Military Headquarters Command, the Special Squadron is relieved of all military duties. Units and individuals under the command of the Special Squadron to cease military activities and operations immediately and place themselves under the command of the nearest superior officer. When no officer can be found, they are to communicate with the American or Philippine forces and follow their directives. For the first time in 29 years, Hiroo Onoda is officially relieved of duty. He removes his cap. He unbuckles his sword. He hands over his rifle, a functioning Arsaka Type 99, still loaded, still maintained after 3 decades in the jungle. He surrenders 500 rounds of ammunition, several hand grenades, and the dagger his mother gave him in 1944 with instructions to kill himself if he was ever captured. The war is over, his war, at least, 10,416 days after Japan's official surrender. On March 11, 1974, Hiroo Onoda walks out of the jungle for the first time in 29 years. He's flown to Manila, where Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos holds a formal surrender ceremony. Marcos grants Onoda a full pardon for the killings, taking into account that Onoda genuinely believed he was still at war. Onoda hands over his sword to Marcos in a gesture of respect. The ceremony is broadcast live on television. The world watches, and then Onoda flies home to Japan. When he lands at Tokyo Airport on March 12, 1974, he's greeted by a crowd of 8,000 people. Cameras flash. Reporters shout questions. People cheer. Onoda is treated like a hero, a symbol of loyalty, discipline, and traditional Japanese values. In a country that had been rebuilt, modernized, and westernized, Onoda represented something old, something pure. He was the last samurai, the soldier who never gave up. But Onoda doesn't feel like a hero. He feels lost. The Japan he left in 1944 no longer exists. Tokyo is a sprawling modern metropolis. Cars everywhere, neon lights, high-rise buildings, people wearing Western clothes, women with short skirts, rock music on the radio. This isn't the Japan he remembers. This isn't the Japan he was fighting for. He's interviewed constantly. Journalists ask him how it feels to be home, what he thinks of modern Japan, whether he regrets anything. And Onoda gives careful, measured answers. He says the toughest part of his experience was losing his comrades. He says he has no regrets because he was following orders. When asked what was going through his mind for those 29 years, he says simply, "Nothing but accomplishing my duty." But privately, Onoda is struggling. He's 52 years old and feels like a relic from another era. The Japanese government offers him a large sum of money in back pay, 29 years worth of military salary. He refuses it. When well-wishers give him money anyway, he donates it all to Yasukuni Shrine, a memorial for Japanese war dead. And then he decides he can't stay in Japan. In April 1975, just 1 year after his return, Onoda moves to Brazil. He settles in a Japanese immigrant community, buys land, and becomes a cattle rancher. He marries a Japanese woman he meets there, and for the first time in his life, he lives quietly, away from the cameras, away from the questions, away from the Japan that no longer feels like home. But the story doesn't end there. In 1980, Onoda reads a news article about a Japanese teenager who murdered his parents. The story disturbs him deeply. He sees it as evidence that Japanese youth have lost their discipline, their values, their sense of duty. So, in 1984, he returns to Japan and establishes the Onoda Shizenjuku, the Onoda Nature School. It's a survival camp for young people, teaching them the skills he learned in the jungle: camping, navigation, self-reliance, discipline. He spends the rest of his life running these camps, giving lectures, and writing about his experiences. His memoir, No Surrender, My 30-Year War, becomes a bestseller. Documentaries are made. A feature film is released in 2021. His story captures the world's imagination. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody talks about. Hiroo Onoda killed people. 30 Filipino civilians died because Onoda and his men believed they were enemy combatants. Farmers, fishermen, innocent people. The Philippine government pardoned him, but the families of those victims never forgot. To them, Onoda wasn't a hero. He was a man who refused to accept reality and kept killing long after the war was over. Onoda himself rarely discussed this in interviews. When asked, he would say he was following orders, that he believed he was still at war, that he had no choice. And legally, that's true. But morally, it's complicated. Loyalty is admirable. Discipline is admirable. But at what cost? Norio Suzuki, the hippie who found Onoda, went on to complete his quest. After finding Onoda, he tracked down a wild panda. Then, in 1975, he claimed to have spotted a yeti in the Himalayas. He married in 1976, but never stopped exploring. In November 1986, at the age of 37, Suzuki died in an avalanche while searching for the yeti. His remains were found a year later and returned to his family. Hiroo Onoda lived to be 91 years old. He died on January 16, 2014, from pneumonia, in a hospital in Tokyo. When the news broke, reactions were mixed. Some called him a hero, others called him a cautionary tale. But everyone agreed. His story was one of the most bizarre, tragic, and fascinating stories to come out of World War II. So what do we take away from this? Hiroo Onoda spent 29 years fighting a war that had already ended because he refused to believe the truth. He dismissed every piece of evidence. He rejected every attempt to reach him. He held onto his orders with absolute conviction, and in doing so, he wasted 3 decades of his life and took the lives of 30 innocent people. Loyalty is powerful, but blind loyalty is dangerous. Discipline is valuable, but unquestioning obedience can lead to tragedy. Onoda's story isn't just about a soldier who wouldn't surrender. It's about what happens when you can't let go, when you can't adapt, when you refuse to see the world as it really is. The war ended in 1945, but for Hiroo Onoda, it didn't end until 1974, and by then, it was too late. So that's the story of Hiroo Onoda, the man who fought World War II for 29 years after it ended. A 22-year-old intelligence officer who took his orders so literally that he spent 3 decades in the jungle, convinced the war was still on, convinced Japan would come back for him, convinced everyone trying to reach him was lying. He watched 3 comrades die or surrender. He killed 30 Filipino civilians. He survived on boiled bananas and stolen rice. He evaded hundreds of search parties, and he only stopped when a hippie college dropout tracked him down in 1974 and convinced him to wait for his commanding officer to show up and say, "Your mission is over." When Onoda finally came home, he was treated like a hero. But the Japan he returned to wasn't the Japan he left. It was modern, westernized, unrecognizable. So he left again, moved to Brazil, became a cattle rancher, and spent the rest of his life trying to teach young people the survival skills and discipline that kept him alive in the jungle. Was Onoda a hero? That depends on who you ask. To some, he represented unwavering loyalty and the warrior spirit. To others, he was a man who couldn't accept reality and kept killing long after he should have stopped. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Onoda was a product of his training, his culture, and his time. He was told never to surrender, and he didn't. But that loyalty came at a cost: 30 lives, 29 years, and a lifetime of wondering what could have been. The real tragedy of Hiroo Onoda's story is that he fought for 30 years. It's that he didn't have to. The war ended in 1945. Japan moved on. The world moved on, but Onoda couldn't. He was stuck in 1944, living out orders that no longer mattered, fighting a war that was already lost. And maybe that's the lesson here. Loyalty is powerful. Discipline is valuable. But blind loyalty, refusing to question, refusing to adapt, refusing to see the truth, can trap you in a prison of your own making. Onoda spent 10,000 nights in the jungle, convinced he was doing his duty. But in the end, he was just a man who couldn't let go. The war ended. But for Hiroo Onoda, it didn't end until someone finally told him it was okay to stop fighting. If this story messed with your head the way it messed with mine, I need to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know, did you know about Hiroo Onoda before this? What do you think? Hero or cautionary tale? And would you have believed the war was over? Or would you have stayed in that jungle too? If you've got ideas for what historical topic I should cover next, throw it in the comments. I'm always looking for the stories that are too wild to believe, but somehow actually happened. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. This channel is all about the real stories, the ones that don't make it into textbooks, the ones that make you question everything. No fluff, no filler, just history the way it actually went down. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the hardest thing to do is stop fighting a battle that's already over. See you in the next one.